we go. Okay, so we're recording the meeting. All right, well, welcome to this little class about pedals and effects. I've got two different cameras going right now, so if you can see both those cameras, you can kind of choose which one you want to look at. There's going to be one of me playing guitar and then one of some effect pedals down here. And there's a way to pin that to the front if you want to keep an eye on either the pedal or what I'm doing up here. So we're just going to talk a lot about all the different types of effects, what they can do, and when you would want to use different types of effects. So first off, there's two different options you have if you want to start getting into doing pedals and effects. You can get individual pedals, or you can get one multi-effect pedal that kind of does a lot of everything. The pros and cons of both of those are that individual pedals, you can be more flexible in that you can switch out a pedal if you decide you don't like it, add a new one, that kind of thing. But a multi-effect pedal, you're stuck with the effects that came with that effect. Beyond that, individual pedals, you have to get a bunch of different power sources for each of those if you're doing a show, either plugs or batteries for each of those. Whereas one multi-effect pedal, you just need one power source. Individual pedals are also great for people who like to collect things. Like if you just love collecting stuff, you can just get a whole collection of pedals going. Me personally, I'm not like that, so I have a one effect pedal that you can see in one of these cameras that's kind of just does everything. Hopefully you can see that all right. And this is a great option if you don't have a ton of money but want to try out a lot of different effects. So you can get a multi-effect pedal like this for $100. You can get some cheaper ones for under $100. This one costs about $300. So it's a pretty good option just to be able to try a bunch of different effects. So you guys are probably all familiar with some of the basic effects, but maybe some of the... So I'm going to go over all the effects that I could think of that any musician might need access to. So if you already know about that effect, cool. Maybe you'll hear about a new one that you've not heard about before. So we'll jump right into it. So there's a couple standard effects that pretty much every musician should kind of be familiar with and use. The most obvious one is EQ. Now, EQ, if you're not familiar with that, is the highs, mids, and lows, that little option that you have on your amp. You can turn up your mids to get a bassier sound. You can turn up your highs to get a more nasally sound. And that's the most important effect in shaping the tone and sound of your guitar. Most pedals, some pedals might come with an EQ setting, but most of the time you're just going to be controlling EQ on your amp. Another important pedal effect that you can get with a pedal, sometimes it's on an amp, sometimes it's not, is reverb. So I'm going to turn on reverb. If you don't know what reverb is, it takes a guitar sound kind of like this. Just got your regular guitar sound, and it makes it sound like it's in a room way bigger than it actually is. So I'll turn this on. So you can kind of hear how that sounded like it was in a big hall, right? That's what reverb is doing. It's great for when you are playing small venues, but you want to sound like those big arena concert musicians. So another awesome effect is compression. Compression is usually used when you're recording music, but compression, I'm not going to show it to you because it's kind of hard to hear, but compression basically takes your signal and makes it last longer. Like it extends the... how long it's being held out for. I'm trying to remember the word for it, just blanked from it. It can also kind of make the louder peaks in the signal quieter. So essentially it just makes your playing a little bit more consistent so that when you're playing, you're strumming, and you accidentally hit the chords a little bit harder, it's not going to show up and kind of ruin the sound. Another important pedal that you're going to need, probably one of the first pedals that you should get if you don't already have a collection, is a tuner pedal. What a tuner pedal does, and I have one right here, I can hold this down, it'll stop the flow of the guitar. So I can sit here, I can play my guitar, and it's not going to go out to my amp, but I can go ahead and tune my guitar. So if I'm in the middle of a performance, I feel like my guitar might be out of tune, I can stop after a song, between songs, mute my guitar, and tune it. And you can see kind of on the amp there, on the pedal there, it kind of shows you what note I am. So that's probably one of the first ones you're going to want to get if you start performing. Next, we're going to talk about overdrive and distortion. Now, I hope all of you already know what overdrive and distortion is. It's pretty common. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I will just point out that there's a lot of different words for distortion, but they all mean essentially the same thing. Starting from like the least amount of distortion to like more distortion, you have like words like overdrive, distortion, turbo overdrive or distortion. You got metal distortion, you got fuzz, metal fuzz. There's all kinds of ways to describe it. For example, here's just a basic overdrive. Turn my reverb off. And then here is going to be kind of a fun one called fuzz. That's about the most distortion you can get, is that fuzz sound. So yeah, that's distortion. Pretty much everyone knows what that is, so it's just good to be familiar with the different levels of distortion you can get. Next, we're going to go into talking about delay. So delay is a really fun effect pedal. And if you don't have any effect pedals and you want to try playing around with one, I would recommend definitely try delay first, because delay you can have a ton of fun with. It'll shape your sound in a lot of different ways. Essentially what delay is doing is it takes the signal of your guitar and repeats it over and over at a specified speed, at a specified amount of times, at different volumes. So let's go down here. I'll show you what we got here. So for delay, there's a couple different ways we can use delay. With delay, you can get kind of a reverby sound, except a little bit more pronounced. It kind of makes it sound like you're in a bigger room because of that echo. So that kind of delay you would use for like country pop, strumming some rhythm chords in a song. Here's what that sounds like. You can kind of hear that, how it just keeps on repeating. That's called a short delay. We can also do a long delay. That delay kind of gives your sound, it's kind of a lush ambient sound that kind of fills up the space of the song. So that can be a ton of fun if you're looking for like a David Gilmour type thing. It just kind of fills up the whole song with lots of noise, and it can sound really cool. Another fun delay is dotted delay. Now, dotted delay is best used when you have a delay pedal that allows you to choose how fast the delay is going to be. So for example here, if I hold this down, then I can tap how fast I want it to be. And now now you can see the light blinking. It's tapping about the speed that I set it to. And that's how fast the delay is going to be. And you can hear that. You can hear bump, 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 bump. So with that, you can, now that you have your delay set to a specific tempo, probably the tempo of the song, you can use that to kind of harmonize with yourself and get some really syncopated riffs going. This was used a lot by David Gilmour. So that's what that is. Does anybody have any questions so far? Nope. Okay, we'll keep on moving. So that's delay. Lots of different ways you can use delay. Like I said, if you don't have a pedal, probably one of the first ones you're going to want to get. The next type of effect pedal that we can get are modulation effects. Now, modulation effects, they change the way your guitar sounds, as opposed to like delay doesn't change how it sounds, it just adds extra sounds to it. The first effect that we're going to look at is a phaser effect. Let me turn this off. The phaser effect essentially creates waves in your signal so that it sounds like your guitar's got this sweeping effect, and you can make it faster or slower. This kind of effect, this was used by Van Halen in the solo for Eruption. Let me see. Something like that, right? He's got that kind of, you hear that awesome trill he's doing, and then it adds this wavy sound to it, and it just made his guitar sound like nothing anyone had ever heard before. And so that's where that got popular, that effect. Another effect that we can do is a flanger effect. A flanger effect doubles your guitar signal and plays them back together, but slightly out of phase and with a slight delay. It's kind of like a phaser. It kind of does the same thing as the phaser, making it go in and out, but it's just doubled and there's a slight syncopation to it. So it's a little bit different. So that one can be used in a lot of fun different ways. Another fun one, this one I really like, is a tremolo effect. I'll go to a tremolo real quick. What that does is it creates, it takes the signal and turns it up and down, the volume, so it'll go in and out several times. This is kind of what it would sound like. The last thing I played was Boulevard of Broken Dreams. It's got the distortion with a tremolo, and it gets that really cool like in and out effect, you know. So if you ever wondered how they did that in Boulevard of Broken Dreams, that's all it is, a tremolo. All right. Another awesome effect that we can use, this one's really popular, especially for country music. It's a chorus. Now what a chorus does is it's kind of like a flanger in that it doubles your signal and delays it slightly, but instead of playing it out of phase, what it's going to do is it's going to change the pitch of it slightly. And so it's almost like it's copying what a 12-string guitar would do, basically playing 2 strings each. And you know, when you play a 12-string guitar, your 2 strings are never going to be perfectly in sync. There's always going to be a slight out of tuneness, even if it's like 1 or 2 cents out of tune. So that's kind of what a chorus is doing, is it gives it a slight out of tune sound, and it sounds really nice. So again, the most common times I've used that personally is when I've needed to copy what a 12-string guitar sounded like. And so that's the way I did it, kind of. Since I don't have a 12-string guitar, I just cheated and did it that way. All right. Next, we're going to talk about expression pedals. Now, expression pedals are what you see over here to the side. I'm going to actually move this down so you can see it a little bit better. Get it all tied up. There we go. All right, so it's this pedal on the side right here. Pull this cord out. Now the expression pedal is going to let you control the different parameters of the effect. So first off, the most common way you're going to use that is just to control the volume of the song. So when it's down, with the heel down, I can't hear any of my guitar. But as I increase it, the guitar gets louder again. So with that, I can do like a tremolo effect with my foot. Or if I can't use my hand to turn my volume up right here, I can use this to turn my volume up and down. Say I'm in the middle of a gig, the bassist looks at me, he's like, "You're too loud," because, you know, guitarists tend to be They like to be louder than everyone else. So guitarist, the bassist looks at you, he's like, you know, you need to be quiet. You're way too loud. You're in the middle of a song. Just put your foot on the pedal and just bring it down slightly, and that'll decrease the volume. But the most common expression pedal outside of volume, just, you know, being able to control the volume, is what's called the wah pedal. And this was popularized by Jimi Hendrix. What it does is it alters the EQ, the equalization, and the tone of your signal by making the highs higher or the lows higher depending on the position of the wah. That's all it's really doing. But if you do it right, it kind of sounds like a person is saying wah wah. Like it's like your guitar is saying wah wah. So it can get really funky. Like wah pedals are used a lot in funk. It's a ton of fun. Probably one of my favorite pedals. Um, so those are the most basic pedals that are used in for guitarists. Some other pedals that I have that I like to play are like, for example, first one that I like to use a lot is a looper pedal. Now a loop is going to record your guitar for a couple seconds, and then it's going to play it back over and over and over. So you can kind of use a looper pedal to kind of build an entire song with one instrument. Let me show you what that sounds like. So there, I'm not playing, but it keeps going. And now if I want, I can add some sounds to it. And then I can add even more layers to it. It doesn't just have to be one. I can add 2, 3. You can combine it with all kinds of different effects, and you can make it sound like you have a whole band going. Because what you could do is you could strum out a little beat, and you got a little beat going in there, and then you can do like a bass line. And then you add some chords, and then finally you just improvise on lead guitar for a while. And that right there, there's musicians where their whole career is just using looper pedals to imitate songs and create their own music. And they go on the streets, they go to bars, they go in cafes, and that's all they're doing. So they're just using the looper pedal, one person. It's kind of smart because if you know, whenever you play a gig, you got to split up the money with whoever's playing. So if you just keep it to one person, you know, you get the most out of it. Another good effect pedal that you can use, this is already in my guitar effect pedal, but you can get it as separate. Say you're collecting different effect pedals, individual ones. You can get a preamp pedal. Now what's nice about the preamp pedal is it's going to have the EQ, which like we talked about before is super important, and it's going to emulate the sound of an amp. So essentially with a preamp pedal, you don't need an amp anymore. And so for doing gigs, that's actually really nice, especially if you have a giant amp like I have and you don't want to carry it around everywhere. You just bring your pedal with the preamp, you plug it into a direct input box that goes into the PA system where the mics are going to be hooked up, and you're good to go. You know, you can carry your guitar in one hand, your pedal in the other. You got everything you need for a whole gig. And so if you're lazy like I am, preamps are awesome. You can also get preamps that emulate the sound of an acoustic guitar. Let me show you what that sounds like. So here's my guitar, no effects or anything. It's on a clean sound, but you can tell it's still an electric guitar. Now I'm going to go to an acoustic preamp. So you see that basically made it, trying to emulate what an acoustic guitar would sound like, and I think it does a pretty good job. And then one of the last effects that I really like to use is an octave effect, where you can make your guitar sound way higher than it is, or you can make it sound way lower than it is. I most commonly use this to make my guitar sound an octave lower, so it sounds like a bass guitar, so that when I'm doing like a looper pedal effect, I'm doing like a song with a loop, I can just make my guitar sound like a bass. So let's see. For this specific pedal, it's on my expression pedal, so I can kind of control it with my foot. But now I have it down, so it sounds like it's a whole octave lower than it actually is. So if I combine that with a looper pedal, there you go. Now I have my bass line, and I can just build on top of that. So that's what that is. And there's lots of other different effects that you can get. There is an infinite amount. People have been creating guitar effect pedals for a long time, and so we've barely like scratched the surface. Like even on just my pedal right here, there's a billion other effects and combination of effects that I can use. And so those are the ones that I wanted to show you guys. Do you guys have any questions? Any specific effect you want to look at a little bit more? What do you think?
Hey, Chandler, I had a question. Is there a pedal or a setting for like a sustain? Like sometimes when I'm like sliding on the guitar, it kind of loses its volume and stuff. Is there something I could do to keep that sustain going longer?
Great question. Yeah, so if your guitar doesn't have a great sustain, like if your body of the guitar is thinner, like if it's a Squire guitar, Les Pauls have a thicker body, tend to hold out longer. So if you just have one of those thinner guitars that's not holding out, what you can do is you can use a compression effect. That's one of the first ones we talked about. Compression is always added whenever you're recording a song, like in the studio. They always add compression. But compression, what it does is it makes your signal more consistent, I guess. So there's no like loud moments or soft moments. It kind of brings it all to the middle, so everything's the same volume. But that can also double to be used to extend the signal longer. So let me see if it's kind of hard to hear, but let me see if I can show you what that's like. So here I've got my compression on, and I just hit the A string, and it's still ringing. I'm going to take my compression off for a sec, and you hear how much quieter it got. I put it back on, you can hear it's still really loud. So compression is going to do exactly what you just said. It's going to extend the length of that as long as you want. So.
Okay. So it would continue extending it even if you like selected you strummed a string and then you slid it. It would still keep that even keel after you've strummed the string.
Just like
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So does it. Cool. Thanks.
And then you can just keep it going. Yeah, and then as soon as you stop playing the note, it's not going to keep going. If you wanted something that did that, you would want to if you wanted to like play a note and have it keep playing, that would be like a delay effect is what you would use. But yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Anybody else have any other questions, or we could go into
Hey, Chandler.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Would you ever use multiple effects at one time?
Oh yes, definitely. Like for example, like just for that Boulevard of Broken Dreams, we played distortion with the tremolo. On this specific pedal, I can combine a lot of different effects together. So I could do like, let me show you. We'll do like a delay. Got that delay going. I'm gonna combine that with a well, actually, let's do a chorus effect. And so that kind of makes like an ambient noise, kind of like what I was talking about before, but now with the chorus, it does it a little bit more. And heck, I could even go here, and to that, I'm gonna add a tremolo effect. Maybe. You know what? No, let's do a phaser. And so right there, you got a phaser, you got your delay, you got chorus, all of that. I'll add some distortion. combining all those different effects, you can get like a sound that doesn't even sound anything like a guitar. So, anybody else have
Cool.
any other questions?
I have another question, Chandler.
Yeah.
Do you see these effects used on the bass guitar much? And if so, which ones?
On bass guitar, you are definitely going to need some effects, but not quite as many. I've seen a lot of different types of effects used for bass guitar, especially for more modern bands that are trying to emulate like a dubsteps type sounding bass, like electronic music type stuff. But I know one bassist who uses a preamp pedal, just like I was explaining before, so that he doesn't have to bring an amp around with him. Because as you probably know, bass amps are way bigger than guitar amps. And so if a bassist can get away without an amp, that's pretty awesome. Outside of that, some of the basic effects like compression you would probably still use. But it's not very common for bassists to use a lot of the other like chorus effects or delay effects. I won't say no one's ever done it, but it's just not as common. Does anybody else have a question?
So to add to that question, is there a order that if you're going to have multiple, do you have to like if you had separate pedals, you have to put them in a certain order for them to work the way you want them to? Do you have that same situation here?
Kind of. So here in the manual for this pedal, it shows me the order of the signal that it goes through. Because as you like you said, when you have individual pedals, the order that you plug it in is going to change the sound drastically. Like if you add distortion before adding the phaser, it's going to be a lot different than if you did the phaser then distortion. So for this, I don't have any way of changing that. It's just kind of set how it is. The only way I could play around with that is if I got other pedals and plug those pedals into this pedal, then I'd be having like a hybrid setup. So, yeah. Other questions?
Thanks.
Other questions? If not, I can show you. There's a lot of wild effects you can do with this. Like for example, this effect right here will automatically harmonize my notes that I'm playing with another note. So you can hear two notes are coming out of my guitar right now. You can kind of hear those together. That's used a lot in metal guitar. Usually we'll just have two guitarists playing like a lead line together, or you could just cheat and do that. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Here's an interesting effect. It's called like an oscillating delay. It's got a really wild sound. Like I don't know when I would ever use that, but it exists. Any other questions?
So another one, Chandler, is how did you learn this? Did you take workshop classes like this, or did you just play around with it and just learn on your own, or how did you learn all about these pedals?
Good question. So I just got a multi-effect pedal. My parents got me one for my birthday when I was in high school, and I just started playing around with the effects that were there. Now, sometimes, especially when don't have as good an ear, you're not good at hearing different things. It's kind of confusing. Like, what's the difference between phaser and flanger? Like, why do we have two different ones? Like, what's this do? What's that do? And there's a ton of effects, so it takes a lot of time to get used to them. But I learned about them just playing them. YouTube videos are great. For example, if you're curious about an effect that you don't own, just look it up on YouTube. Somebody's played it, somebody's demonstrated it. If you're looking at buying a pedal and you're not sure how it's going to sound, look it up on YouTube. Someone will demonstrate how it works. If you want to hear how a pedal works with your own guitar, take your guitar into a guitar store. If they have the pedal there, you can usually plug it in and try it out. But yeah, it just takes time of just you playing it, because you could listen to other people do it all you want, but you doing it is the best way for you to see, okay, I could use chorus in this situation, or I can use this kind of sound in this other situation. So, yeah. Well, it's been half an hour, so I think we'll end there. If anybody has any other questions, you're welcome to stick around and ask them. I think Zoom's going to boot us off in a few minutes because it's got a limited amount of time we can be on here. But That's all I've got for the class. If you got other questions, you can stick around. We can chat a little bit longer. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.